all three of them are also sitting in one container. All three are also sitting in one container. So we're talking about how to use auto layout and components practically when designing websites. So I was talking about how a website is made up of several pages, and a page of a website is made up of sections, and one section is made up of containers. And all these three guys, these three elements, the header, the paragraph, and the button, they are all in one container. So I will show you how to create containers using auto layout, how to create sections using auto layout and frames. So this particular website, we don't have the time to design it from top to bottom. So let me get a picture of this website. So you have several extensions or plugins on your Google, whatever browser you're using. I'm using Google Chrome, and the extension I use to make a screen grab of the whole page is Go Full Page. So once I do that, it helps me make a screenshot of the whole thing and convert it into a picture that I can use anyway. But here I want to use it on Figma. So let's just wait for that to finish.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Please confirm if you can.
Yes, can you?
All right, thank you, Jason. So I already screen grabbed that particular web page, and I can go ahead to download it as PNG. Once I do that, it saves in my system, and going ahead to create a design file. I can do that by just creating a draft. Let me not go through the whole process of creating a thing. So once you create a Figma file, always make sure you name your Figma file. Let's call this KodeCamp sample. So always make sure you name your Figma file. It's very important. So that particular picture I downloaded, I can import it using I use a shortcut there. But let me do the manual way so you can see. I can import it. I mean, lots of you already know how to do this. I come in here, and this is the screenshot. So I drop the image, and I would prefer for it to be the same size as my frame size, that is 1440, because of scaling issues. So let's start designing quickly. And I go ahead to create a frame. Always make sure you use existing frame dimensions. And for this, I'm going to use the desktop size. And right after that, the very first thing that you should do, as I explained, before you start designing, make sure you have your style guide. The style guide should be complete somewhere. But because of time, I'll skip all that process. I also explain to you how you can choose to create your style guide on the go, especially when you're speed designing, when you're in a hurry. So assuming we have our style guide, I can easily import a UI kit for the style guide, but that will take a little bit of time also. So before I start designing, and this is one thing that a whole lot of you still forget to do, make use of layout grids. It really helps your work. And you've been taught how to do that. So I'll just quickly rush through it. I'm going to set my margin to 120 because that's how I like mine, and make my gutter 40. So this is my layout grid. While designing, it's also very important for you to name your layers. Your layers are, because every single thing I drop, everything I put on the Figma file, on the Figma board appears here. You can see layers. So I have rectangle 1. If I duplicate it, it turns to rectangle 2. I can put an ellipse 1, and all of that. So every single thing you put on the Figma board, try as much as possible to name them, give them actual names. It will really help you. But because sometimes that can be very challenging, just make sure that you name your sections and you name your containers. I'll show you the sections and I'll show you the containers. So going ahead to design, I dropped one frame and I will name that my home page. You can rename the frame by clicking Control or Command R, or just double tap this or double tap it here and rename. So this is my frame. The width is 1440 and the height is 1024. I would rather change the height to 800, and there are specific reasons why. It varies from system to system. But for my system, my viewport height is 800. That's why I'm changing it to that. But don't worry about all that complexities. Soon enough, you'll understand what all that means. So changing your height is not necessary, because this height, you know that will still always increase and decrease based on the content. So let me leave that as 800 for now. So our picture, this is what we're copying. And even though I don't really like this design, I think we can just pick out 2 or 3 sections from it to design. So let's start with the hero section, or rather, let's start with the navbar. Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. So I want to design this navbar or header. Some people call it header, some people call it navbar. So the first thing I'll do is to get my logo. Let me use a text, for instance, for that logo and just name it logo. I'm not looking into my color style or text style because that will take time. So I'm just using the default, which is Entra. So for my logo, let me just style it a little bit, and we'll just call our logo. I don't need to style it too much. So this is our logo. And then I want to start adding all these links. So the very first link we have there is, can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. So the very first link we have there is home. And then I can also create a new text and write home. This is styled this way because that's the previous style that I used for my logo. And let's make that 16 regular. So this is my text link. So you know that I have home, I have pages, I have blog, properties, and all of that. So learning how to use auto layout and components. In this case, what lots of you have been doing is just to duplicate this and create, what's the next page there? Let's say about, and then duplicate it again and create services and all of that. But a better way to do this is first start by making this home a component. But before you do that, it's advisable to first put it in a frame, preferably an auto laid frame. That's a frame that has auto layouts. So you can do that. You know how to add auto layouts. You can just press Shift A. So once I do this, this already looks like a container, or rather, this is a container because the container has. Okay, let me define what a container is. We already defined that website is made up of several pages, and a page is made up of several sections, and a section is made up of several containers, and a container is made up of one or more elements. And you already know what elements are. Your elements is your text, your shape, your icon, and all of that. Those are individual elements. So when I have 2 elements together sitting in this auto layout frame, or even one, you can have just one and it's a container. And the more I design, you start to understand why it's important to use auto layout, and it's important to have these things these ways. So let me delete that. This is a container, and I'll go ahead to name it because I already said this, that try as much as possible to name your containers, your components, and all of that. So I'll name this nav link because that's what I want it to be, a nav link. So this is already in. This is a frame that has auto layout, and you can see that by this sign. If you were just a normal frame, this is a normal frame. You can see the symbol of a normal frame. One thing I would like for you guys to do when you're not designing or anything you should come here. You can see this question mark, help and resources. Click it. When you click on it, you'll see keyboard shortcuts. And that's what you have here. So let me see, just a minute. If it's still here. Okay, so this keyboard shortcuts will actually help you. It will improve your workflow. You have different types of shortcuts. So just read through them. This is you just trying to improve your Figma skills. And there's also somewhere here that you can check. I don't know where exactly it is now, but I think I'll find out later and share it with you. But there's somewhere here that you can check and see what all these different icons mean. This rectangle here is a rectangle, and that's the symbol for rectangle. T is for text, and you can see a whole lot of them here. You can see them here. You can see them here. So when you apply these elements on your board, they would appear on the layers panel with a symbol and the name of that layer. So in some cases, you have the default name. In other cases, you've renamed them, like this particular nav link, which I've already renamed to be nav link. So I'll show you the difference between an auto-laid frame and a normal frame. This is a normal frame. And if I add auto layout to this frame, it turns to an auto-laid frame. You can see the symbol. So let me delete that. So I was talking about creating your nav link using auto layout and components. So for you to do that easily, you have to understand how auto layout works. So let me leave this design a little bit and come here to show you, to help you understand and appreciate the different properties of auto layout. So this is a rectangle. Let me call the rectangle tester, because we're using it to test auto layout. And then I apply auto layout to this by pressing Shift A. So once I do that, by default, Figma gives me some default values, which are normally the space between the space in your auto-laid frame and your padding, horizontal and vertical padding. So Figma automatically gives me 10 for all of that. Let me name this also to call, let's say, test wrapper. So this frame now, this particular container, so to say, is auto-laid. This frame is auto-laid. I'm going to duplicate it and remove the auto layout here. So the one below, let me change this color to, these are just default styles. And Figma, let me change this to red, and let me change this to blue. So the blue frame is the auto-laid frame, or rather the blue rectangle is sitting in an auto-laid frame or a frame with auto layouts, and the red rectangle is sitting in a normal frame. You can see the normal frame. Let me give the frames color so you can see them better. So the frames both have white in them. So I gave the two frames fill, which is white. So if I were to say I want to create more rectangles, more red rectangles inside this frame, and I press Ctrl D. I'm pressing Ctrl D, I press it like 8 times. You can see that it has duplicated here. And all those duplicates are sitting on top of each other. That's because this frame does not have the auto layout component. But if I do the same thing here, okay, let me bring this here. If I do the same thing here, you can see that it's duplicating downward and maintaining the same space all through. The space between the one below and above remains 10, and that value is coming from here. If I should increase this to 40, you can see that this also has increased to 40. So using auto layout like this, if I were to do the same thing using a frame without auto layout, I'll first have to manually increase the size of my frame. And then let me delete some of these guys. And then I'll first duplicate the first one and make sure that the space between is 40. And then I'll now duplicate it again and make sure that it's 40 and keep doing that. And you saw how fast it was when I used the blue rectangles that are all sitting inside an auto layout frame. So that's how auto layout works. And then you have different properties of auto layout. This is the direction. You have vertical, and you know vertical is up to down. or down to up, and you have horizontal. Once I hit horizontal, you see the way it changes. I'm showing you all this because we're actually going to apply it. And then we have a third one, which is a new component that Figma just added, and it's called wrap. And there's a way that works. It helps you, it wraps your content such that as I'm increasing and reducing the width of the oscillate frame, so is the content inside. And this particular feature is meant for responsiveness. If you're able to use this, if you're able to use layout very well, it would improve how easy and fast your designing of responsive websites would be. But for a normal frame, if I were to increase the width, you can see nothing is happening. The content of that frame is sitting in one place. There's a reason why they're sitting here. I can change some of the constraint settings to make that this particular, the first rectangle, also move. But we already taught you about this in the class about layout grids and constraints and all of that. So I'm just showing you for auto layouts because we're going to be using auto layouts for everything we're doing to design these templates that we've got, this one. So still showing you what auto layouts can do. Let me put this to the horizontal position, and I can decide to increase the horizontal padding. What that does, this is the horizontal padding. The horizontal padding is the space between the first item and the border of the frame. That's the left padding. And this is the right padding. This is 10. So I can choose to increase everything together or increase them individually. So this is the column for left padding. You can see it's left padding. If I increase that to 50, to 60, and I increase right padding to 20, you can see the difference. It also reflects here. If I increase top padding, you can see I can also increase and decrease this way, and same thing for bottom padding. So that's pretty much what you have in auto layout. There are still some other things. Okay, another thing in auto layout is the alignment of your auto layout frame. You can choose to align bottom, top, middle, or bottom. And for you to see how that works, I would have to increase the dimension of this frame. So you can see that as I'm increasing it downward vertically, all the content are sitting in the middle. That's because the alignment is set to the middle. This is, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9 different figures here, so to say, or 9 different variables, 9 different settings. So the very first one is top left, you have top center, you have top right. By the time you play with auto layout, actually, you understand all these things. But the way it works, I can choose to align to the center, align to the right, and all these are top left, top right, top left, top middle, top right. There is also center left. You can see that it came to the center now. There is center center or center middle, whichever one, and a center right, and the same thing for bottom. And the last thing that we have for auto layouts, okay, these are advanced features. We don't need to cover that. And the dimensions, that's what we have here. The size of your frame. If I go into this class will become longer. You guys should just play around with these different sizes. You have fix, you have hug, and you also have fill. Fill is not showing in this for this frame, and that's because this particular frame is not sitting. It's not sitting inside another frame. You only have fill when the element you're clicking on is sitting inside an auto-late frame, which is what you can see here. So all those things do different things. Fill would make it occupy because this particular setting is the horizontal size. That is why I set it to fill, and it's trying to fill the space that we have in our frame. If I delete all these guys, you see this one fills everything. And the difference in this space and this space is coming from the padding, which I set earlier. And let me set everything to be 10 so you can appreciate that better. And org. So if I set this to fill, it fills the container, and I can choose to make it fixed. That's a little bit technical, but the more you play around with it, you understand it better. So let's go back to our nav link because we're going to apply some of those things here. So we already applied auto layout to this particular nav link. And in the next thing I would do, okay, before I do that, let me delete this, guys. So I'm going to create another link and call it about. So because these two guys, it's fine this way, but there's a better way to do this. And that's by first making this a component. Because if I choose to change the color of this to red or whatever, in the future, it doesn't affect this. You already know about components and all. So I'm going to go ahead to make this guy a component by pressing Command Alt K, or you know how to do that up there. And because this is a component, I can duplicate this, and whatever I do here reflects here, like changing the color. It would affect all of the instance of that component. So I have home. I also want to have about. I want to have, so instead of me stressing myself doing all of this, I can decide to put these two guys. And remember, I also told you that always make sure that you don't use your main components inside your designs. There's a reason why, but just take that as a rule of thumb. Don't make use of the main components inside your design. So I'll put this out there, wrap it in a component, wrap it in auto layouts rather, and name it components. So I'm going to be putting all my components in here. Let me give it let me add color to it so you can see. Okay, so I'll be adding all my components here. And this home button, or this home link is an instance of this main component. This is the main component now, and you can tell by the symbol. You can see the rectangle that has 4 rectangles in it, or diamond, whichever. Yeah, this is a diamond, is the main, and the one that is hollow, that looks like a stroke, are instances or baby components. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap these two guys in an auto layout frame by pressing Shift A and rename it to let me call them, is someone talking? Let me call them nav link container. So because of the direction of this auto layout, let me reduce the space to 10 for consistency. Once I click duplicate, you can see how easy that is. I don't have to worry about spacing. I know that the space between each and every one of them is 10. That's because of auto layout. So I go ahead to edit this. Let's call this services. What else do we have there? Properties and blog. So these are they are not yet properly aligned, but I would adjust that soon. So the very last thing that we have there is this telephone number. And I can do that by using a normal text. And let me get that phone number. So you can see that there's also an icon, and you know where to get icons. I don't want to get the icon. It's going to be a little bit distracting. But these are the 3 things, or these are all the things that you have in the nav bar, which is what you're seeing here. You have the logo, you have the nav links, and you have the phone number. So what I'm going to do next is now to put all 3 of them in an auto layout frame and name it header, because that's what is going to become my header or my nav bar, whichever one. So there's still an issue of spacing. It's still not aligned with the margin. So what I'll do is to drag this, and once I see that red line, I know that, okay, it's 120 pixels away from the edge of the screen or the edge of the frame. If I check, you can see it's 120. This is the power of using layout grids. So you don't have to worry about this pink and white line showing in your design. I can on or off it. Even if it's on, it won't show if I view it in prototype. So you don't have to worry about that. For those of you that are always running away from layout grids, that's taking time. So now that my frame is the height which I want it to be, which is actually 1200 pixels. And that's going to be where all my content fall in. And the next thing I want to do is make sure that they're all aligned. So to do that, I'm going to align them to the middle and change the setting for this auto layout frame, because you can see that right now I can decide to put space or gap between each of the items, which is, I can do that this way by increasing it until that text gets to the end. And you can see now when I view it in prototype or presentation mode that it's looking like it should. The space between here and here is the same. But there's also another way to do that, because there's some cases where you won't be able to put in a manual value here. And to do that, you can come here. I don't remember how to do that manually because I'm used to making shortcuts. You can come here and just click on X. Once you click on X and it changes, you can see that the padding here now, before it was 288, but now it's saying auto. And what that auto means is it's because of the width of this auto layout frame is fixed. It's just calculated based on the dimensions of everything inside. It's calculated the space that is inside the frame and created padding, or so to say. It's actually not padding, but we call it gap space. It's calculated the gap space based on the dimension of the elements inside that frame. So what I did there was I can put in a number here to change that. You can see what's happening now. And to undo that, I can come here and click X. There's actually a manual way to do this, but I actually don't remember right now. And you can see that the symbol changes. There's a reason why this symbol changes, but let's not go too deep into that. So then we have our nav bar. And because I want my nav bar to be sitting at the top, I'm going to add a little bit of top padding. Let's say 24, just top padding. So this is what we have. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead to make my nav bar a component. I'll duplicate it and move I'm cutting out the main component and I'm dropping it in here. The frame, I'm putting all my main components. So what I have here is an instance. So after that, I have my navbar. The next thing I want to do is to create the hero section. This hero section doesn't have so much to it. So let me skip that and go ahead to create this next section. In this section, I'll be able to show you more about how to use oh, you know what? Let's just go ahead and create it. Let's go ahead and create it. So I'm going to quickly rush that, and I'm going to add a text that says, let me copy what we have here. So we already taught how to make use of different extensions on Chrome. I can use this particular one to check for the typeface settings, the style of this particular text, and you have the size as 40. I have the weight as 600, and line height 56. So let me quickly copy what they have there to save time. We have 40. 600 is actually semi-bold. I already taught you guys how to check that. Okay, so I'm going to put this here. And the next thing I'm going to do is to put the whole thing, this nav bar and this. Okay, before I put them into one auto layout frame, because I already said that these three guys are in one container, which is true. I'm going to get another text. Let me duplicate this and copy this lorem ipsum text. There's a lorem ipsum plugin, but it's faster for me to do this. So I'm going to check for the style of this text. And check for dimensions. We have the weight is 500, that is medium, and then size is 18. So I'm going to apply that here. 18 medium. Let me also apply the same font. That's Poppins. So, okay, you can see now this is a good example of using of using components, because I want to change all my text from inter to Poppins. All I have to do now is go here and change it to Poppins. So not only does it change here, it also changes inside my navbar, because this navbar is a component, but within this component is another component, which is my nav link. This is the main component of the nav link. This is the main component. I made use of instances of this main component to create my navbar. And the more you do that, it just makes editing and all of that very, very easy and fast. So now I've changed all these buttons. You can see that they're all saying Poppins. Ideally, this should have a particular style, but I'm not going through all that long journey because that's not the point of this class. So I'm also changing these two guys to Poppins. And there you have it. So with these two text selected, I'll press Shift A, and that's auto layout. So when it comes to designing the hero section, because hero sections usually have an unconventional, in most cases, kind of feel. I usually don't like to put my hero, depending on the kind of design. For this particular design, I won't be able to use heroes. I won't be able to use auto layout for the hero section because of this guy, this image here. I can actually use it, but I can make it auto layout, and but that's a little bit complicated. So I'm just going to use a normal frame for that. And we already have our text here, and the space between that is most likely something around 24 or 32. That looks like 32. So I'm just following what they have there. And the background, you can see that the purple background does not apply to the nav bar. It's only somewhere within this area. So to do that, I can now make use of, I can actually use auto layout here, but it will just confuse you. So let me just use a rectangle there. And I sent it to the back. Use the eyedropper tool to get the color and change these guys to white. I'm sure that by now, all these things I'm doing is no longer strange to you because you've been taught. So I'm just rushing through them. So let me get this image and drop it here.
So fit to eat that thing small small. Eh?
Who is that person? What are we
Finish.
eating small small?
Finish.
Finish.
I come and meet
Whoever
something
that is,
outside.
please, can you mute your mic? People, please, can you help me mute whoever that is? Thank you. So I'm going to reduce the size of this image, and I hello, can you guys still hear me? Can anybody hear me? Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, please, what did you hear me say last? Can you tell me what you heard me say last? Because I don't know when I got cut off.
We're talking about
to scale the picture.
a photo.
How to scale the photo? Wow, that was a long. Okay, that's not too far back. So I didn't do much. The only thing that um I did was that this is my hero section frame. It's a frame in its own. I didn't apply auto layout to it. So I created a different, let me delete it and do it again. So I created another frame, which I'm going to use as my homepage frame now. There's a reason I did that. But what I want is that this homepage frame, this white frame, this is where I want all my sections to sit in. And the very first section is the hero section that contains, actually, the nav bar is actually a section on its own. There are people that choose to design the nav bar as a section in its own. Sometimes you can choose to design it as a container within the hero section. That would differ based on different case scenarios. So I'm going to drag this my hero section frame in here and align it. So the home page now, the hero section, you can see in your layers panel. Let me collapse all of that. So I have home page. Test wrapper is this guy. Okay, I can delete it now. I can delete this one too. So you can see that my board is made up of just three things. This image, my components frame that houses all my components, and my homepage frame where I'm designing. And my homepage frame is made up of just one frame right now, my hero section. So this is the height of my hero section. This additional 224 pixels is coming from my homepage frame. Once I add auto layout to it and change the height from fixed, because right now the height is fixed. If I change it to hog, the height is going to hog.
Dirty. See your hand now. See your hand. Dirty. See.
Oluebube, can you mute your mic? Otherwise, you'll be kicked out of the class. This is the last time we're going to be warning you. All right, moving on. So I was talking about the height of my frame, and because I set it to hog, okay, before this is what we had, it was set to fixed, and fixed, it doesn't change anything. As I increase it, it just changes the height. You can see the values increasing and decreasing. But if I change this to hog, it's going to hog. The height of the frame would vary based on the content. So it's just as if it's hogging, the frame is hogging all of the content. The more I add to it, the more, this is the home page. You can see that the height is increasing. And I can't input a manual value here because it's set to hog and not fixed. So let me delete all of that. That's what we have for our hero section. There's still one more thing. That image is not showing well, and this is why. So this is our hero section. And to add the button, you have the get started button. I'm just going to, let me make use of what I have here. And I'll just change because I can see that this text is not regular. It looks like it's either medium or semi-bold. If we come back to the design to check it, you can see that this is semi-bold. That's 600. The width is 600, which is semi-bold. And the size is 15. But I'm going to make mine 16. I don't like that size. It's too small. And change the color to white. Okay, the button actually has a feel of white. And the text is purple. So the text is purple now. It's still sitting in there, but it's purple. And then the feel is white. And then there's also a little bit of corner radius. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like, yeah, that looks like 4, the border radius. So the difference now, you can see this button. Let me make a screenshot and bring it closer. So this is the button that they have in that picture. So the difference in the spacing now, the padding, is what I'm changing, is what I'm setting now. And you can see that the left and right padding are obviously a little bit more than the top and bottom padding. So in this case, okay, before I change that, I have to first detach it from the main comp. Remember that I'm still editing the nav link. I made a duplicate of my nav link, which is a component. So to detach it, I can just come here and detach instance. There's also a shortcut for that. And let me rename this now to button because I want it to be a button. So what I'm going to do next is to increase the what's it called, padding. So it looks almost similar, but it's still not there yet. So let me make this 32 or 40. It looks like that's 40. Yeah, 40. Can make this 20. Nope. So you can see the way I'm using that to guide the design of my own buttons. There's actually a way to check this from the live website, but that's going to just confuse you. So now what I have there is looking. I'm trying to load this frame. Okay, I can delete this now. So what I have here is looking like something like this. So the difference here now is this is where we're getting inspiration from. The why it's looking different is that they are padding, or rather their margin. That's the space. That's this space, which I used 120. This is the margin. I'm using 120, but theirs is different. Theirs is about 20, and that's because of the viewport of my own system. If you view it on your system, if you are using maybe a HP laptop, depending on the viewport, it won't be this little because the viewport of mine is small. I'm using a smaller system. That's why the website is compressed a little bit. So not to worry too much about that. You can see now that the button is the main thing I'm showing you. Let me change the text to get started. And then you can see that the button is almost the same thing. So it's very similar. So this is how you get inspiration from other websites. If I were to just design this thing from my head, especially you guys that are just learning, it won't come out as neat as this because you are not getting inspiration from somewhere. So that is the hero section. And then I'll go ahead to create this next section. Okay, let me leave it here. And to do that, I can duplicate my hero section. And duplicate the hero section. And that jumped downward because of the auto layout. And there's a little bit of space in between these two hero sections. That's 10. And that's the space between, that's the gap padding, the gap value. So I'm going to remove that and make it 0 because I don't want any space to be there. And this is my second section. Let me name it what's the name of that section? We provide expert insights to make buying a home. Let me name it. What can we name it? Features, just for the sake of naming. Remember, I said always make sure you name your sections. So I'm going to press as this particular section or this frame is currently clicked. Once I press enter, it selects all of the elements or containers sitting inside that frame, and I can delete everything because I don't want all of that. I want to design this now. So to do that, what I'm going to do is first get this text. So this particular text is similar to what we have up here. I'm just going to drag it and put it in here and change the color to black. So just so you know, it's not good to use 0000. That's pure black. What happened there? It's not good to use pure black for your designs. Always make sure you use something. You can change the saturation of that by just coming here and changing it a little bit. Let's see something like this. Personally, I like to use 16161D, and that's because of this particular color code is quite unique. This darkness or this blackness, let me make that this color. Let me make that the color of this frame so you can see it better. Yeah, this blackness is different from, let me duplicate that and make this one 0. You can see the difference. This is pitch black. This is off black, so to say. You have off white. Why can't you have off white and off black? So, but this particular 16161D is a specific color. That's what I like to use. And that's because of, when you close your eyes, you close your 2 eyes, you're not seeing anything. You think you're seeing pitch darkness. But what you're seeing when you close your 2 eyes is not 000. It's closer to this particular color. And that color actually has a name. I think it's called, I don't know how to pronounce it. I can only spell it. Yeah, that is this. So this particular blackness this is the color code, and that's what I would advise you use for your blacks. But there's also a way to create your black color based on your style guide, based on your primary color, which Favor has already taught you. So in such a case where you have that, it's safer to use the black color that you derived from your primary color. So that being said, don't use 00000. And the reason why you're not using 000 is because it is too sharp. And when you're using it, especially for text, when you have like a blog post, for instance, I think this website has a blog. So if you come here and let me click on one of the blog posts. So you can see, okay, I can actually even show you. If I use this, my What's Fonts plugin again, I can come here and see, you can see that the color they used here is not 000. Even the one that they used for this text is still not 000. And the reason why that is if you use 000, it will be too sharp. And by the time you are reading a long blog post, before you know it, your eye will start to strain because the difference in contrast is too sharp. You have FFF, that's pure white, and you have 000, that's pure black. When you have pure black against pure white, the difference in contrast is too sharp, and it can affect the eyes of the reader. And the truth about it is, you might be wondering, how does that concern me? Well, it does concern me because of it affects the user experience. If, for instance, I'm going to Linda Ikeji's blog, and I'm always reading her blog post, but by the time I get halfway through the article, I'm seeing that my eye is paining me. I won't go back there because I'll be wondering, why is it that every time I visit this website and I'm reading this post, my eyes are always paining me? So, and it's not just for people that wear glasses, it's for everybody. So that being said, I'm using 16161D here as my color code. And let me get this text. So remember, this class is still teaching you on how to use instances, use components, and auto layout in designing. So this is my hero section. You can see that it's not auto layout. There's no auto layout. I don't have auto layout settings here. So when I press plus, that it's now auto layout. And you can see it actually did something there. For this section I'm designing, I'll actually use auto layout and show you how to design sections and containers using auto layout. So the next thing I want to do, let me snap this guy and bring it closer. It's too far. Can you guys hear me? Are you following? Is there anything you don't understand so far? Sorry, I'm rushing. Time is fast spent. And anyone unmute their mic can confirm that you're actually following, because I'm not checking the chat. All right, thank you. So what we have here, I want to design this card. It's actually a card. You have 3 of the cards and it comes together to make a container. The container plus this text come together to make a section. So we're going to design all of that using auto layout and components. So to design this very first card, let me first start by doing that text, easy and safe. So I'm going to reduce the size of that just a little for the sake of hierarchy. I think semi-bold is fine. 32. Let me see what they used to be very sure. I can just freestyle it on my own, but since we have someone like getting inspiration from, why not? So the size is 24, the weight is 600. That's semi-bold. So let's make that 24. And then duplicate it again. And you have it paragraph text. Let me copy this and paste it. So that is, let's check for the font style. You have 400. That's the weight. That's regular, and this text size is 16. So you can see here now, I already mentioned that, and lots of you didn't apply that in your design. I mentioned it that the minimum font size for your paragraph or body text should be 16. There are cases where you will have less than 16, and those are for like maybe caption text. Sometimes some people might want your link to be a little bit smaller than your body size. Let's see what they used here. Okay, here's also 16. But I'm pretty sure on this website, I'll find one place that they use less than 16. And this is a good example. This is caption text. They use 16 too, but this is a fine place to use less than 16 in case of where you have issues with hierarchy. That's where it's fine, because this is caption, or some people call it meta, but I just say caption. And that's for cases like this, or in cases maybe where you want to write date, for instance. This is also caption. It's different from a paragraph text. So it's all just for the sake of hierarchy. So that being said, we have this as 16 and regular. So you would also notice that these are very minor details that easily pass you by. You will notice that the color for the header here is different from the color for the text. In the header, let me cancel all this so you can see it. The header, you can see the color code. For the text, you can see the color code. They are different. You don't, for long text, so to say, which is usually a paragraph or body text, you don't want to use this black. This black, let me just make it a style so that I can easily use it. Since I didn't do that from start, what I can easily do is select my home page. If I want to make all black here, what I have in my style guide, because this one now is detached, it's not in the style guide. I can easily just select the frame, and under selection colors, I come here. Every place I have 000, I want them to turn to this my style guide color. And I do that by coming here and selecting black. This 16161D is still my selection color, but it's not attached to the style. So I'll also select it and make sure that it's attached to the style. So every place I come to here, you can see that it has the style guide color, including my components. For the components, once I change that in the main component, it will reflect here, but this is an easier way to do it. Actually, also make sure that you change it here, because the main components now is not attached, because I didn't change it from the main component. So once I do that, everything reflects. And same thing for the navbar. Same thing for the navbar. Okay. Thank you, everyone. So for this guy, I don't want it to be black. It's a little bit off. Let me say 7. No, that's a little bit light. Let me make that 8. No, I should be increasing it instead. Yeah, so this is just an easy hack to select your colors. You can just press one number, and the more you play with Figma, you understand these things. Let me not go too deep into that. So I select these two texts. I want to put them into one container, and then I press Shift A and name it. What can I name it? Let me name it text. Let me name it card text. So I reduce the space to be 24, and that looks like it's 16 actually. So that's what we have here. And the next thing is to add this icon. This is actually a medium. The next thing is to add this icon, and we get icon from Iconify. That's a shield icon. So I'll just go ahead to type shield, and you can see. Let me see if I can find that particular type that has the 2 colors. Okay, let me use this one. This is similar. So I can choose to import as an icon or import as a component. And I'm going to choose to import as a component for a specific reason. you see that soon enough. So because the icon I just imported, that's this guy. I'm going to bring him here, and under where I have components, I'm going to drop him. Where's the icon? So I'm going to drop it in here, so you can see it here. It's also under components. But what I like to do is to separate my icons, because definitely your website will have so many icons. I would like to separate my icons and put them in a separate auto layout frame just for organization. It's not by force, but it just increases my workflow. This in there. So every icon main component, I drop it inside there. So I'm going to click that guy and copy, Control C. Then come here. Where do we have that card? Yeah. So I'll place it inside this frame. But you can see that it's inside a circle. So instead, I can choose to bring in an ellipse and just put it there and group it. That by doing it this way. I think this is about size looks like a 60. I can do it this way. The icon is there, but it's at the back. And get out that color. Let me use the same color. And let me make that color a style. So you can see that as I'm designing, I'm also creating components and creating my style guide. This is for cases where you're in a hurry. But as a beginner, I would advise that you start by creating a style guide first. So in cases where you're having difficulties with your style guide, that does not mean that because you've not been able to create style guide, it will now delay your work. Go ahead and start designing. Once you are designing, most times actually, by the time you start designing, you will see that it's easier for you to know what you want to be inside your style guide. So that should not delay you. If you are not making progress with one thing, you'd go ahead and do other things and then come back to it. So this ellipse and my icon, Control G to group. So that is the way you are used to. But how I would rather do it is to, let me undo. Okay, I don't need to undo that. The icon, we have this icon. Let me give it a color so you can see it. So what I would rather do is just press Shift A, put it inside an auto layout frame and rename it to call it card icon, because it's already the icon for that card. I name a card icon. I give it a fill color of my primary color, and then that black I change to white. Let me give this white also. Let me make it a what's it called? What do we call it again? Let me make it a style. Yeah. So we have color. So to make sure that everything I've designed so far is attached to that style, instead of clicking the frame like I did before, I can just press Ctrl A so that everything on my canvas is clicked. And then anywhere I have FFF, I come there and click white. So everything is now attached to that white. So we still have this black somewhere. Let's see where that's coming from. Okay, that's this icon. It's the icon I just brought in that is black. Because I remember I changed everything to this primary, to the black in our style guide. So now we have our card icon. And then the next thing I'm going to do, of course, is to give the border radius. You keep on increasing till it becomes completely circular. Let's just say 100. And then that's it. So to increase the size of this card icon frame now, I can just do that by increasing the padding. And then making sure that the icon is sitting down at the center. So it's pretty much similar to what we have there. I can delete this guy. So the difference here, you actually see the reason why I made it this way. You'll soon see the reason why I did it this way. It's always good for you to use auto layouts instead of groups. And another reason why is that I hope you all know that all these things you are designing, it's just the design. The website is not live. It's you can only prototype it such that when I click on once I click on home or once I click on about, taken to the about us page. But I've not prototyped that, so it's not clicking. But it's just design. It's not a live website. It hasn't been programmed. All that you are designing, you're going to hand out your design to the developer because you are like the architect when creating a building. The architect drafts out how the building should be, and then he hands over the blueprints, which are your designs, to the developer. In this case, the constructor, whoever is doing the construction, the builders, those are the developers, those are the programmers, and they are going to use code. Code is just like cement and block. They're going to use it to patch up what they are seeing in your design and make the building come alive. So to make that transition easier, it's best to just use auto layout frames because when the developers are developing, they actually use containers and sections and all these things. They call them div blocks. And those div blocks are very similar to Figma intentionally made auto layout frames to replicate the properties of div blocks when developing so that it's very easy. If I design a website now and say who is here, Josephine designs the website, and me, I just make use of groups. The website looks exactly like this, like what we have. I use group here, I use rectangle at the back, I do all of that. And then Josephine makes use of auto layouts. It will be easier for the developer to read what she has done and interpret it into actual code because of she used auto layouts. And that's pretty much it. Let me not go in depth. Just know that it's best practice to make use of auto layouts. It's good to make use of groups. It's actually good to make use of groups. It's better to make use of frames, and it's best to make use of auto layouts. So nowadays, you hardly find people using groups anymore because the whole thing is just outdated. There are specific cases where you're going to make use of groups. For instance, let me not go into that, but there are cases where it might be hard to use auto layout, so you might just have to use group. But for this case, why isn't auto layout? There's no hindrance to auto layout here. So moving on, this is my card icon and this is my card text. Clicking on both of them, I press Shift A and rename that frame to the card because that is my card now. This is one card. And the space between that looks like a 32. Yeah, that looks like it. So you can see that that frame has a color that is off-white. So I'll just use my eyedropper tool to get out that color. And then add padding. The top and bottom padding are obviously more. The space between here and here is more than the space between here and here. That's pretty obvious. So let me give my top padding to be 40 and my left and right padding to be 24. Let's make that 32. It looks more than that. So there's no border radius, so no need to do that. But for consistency's sake, because I have border radius of 4 in my button, I would also like to add 4 to my card. And that's just for consistency. So I can delete this guy now. I have it. And delete this one. So now what I want to do is duplicate this and make them 3. But before I do that, I first have to make sure that the width of my auto layout frame is right. And how do I determine the width of the auto layout frame? You can see that these 3 cards, they all have the same width and they are evenly distributed within this frame. I can do that manually, but that's going to be very stressful. The easier way to do that is I reactivate my, okay. So these guys are not sitting on the margin. That's because of I've not made my features. Remember I was designing the features section. I've not made the auto layout. So once I make it auto layout and set this to fill, I'm setting it to fill so it can occupy the width of my home page. That's the parent container or the body. The body is the page and the page houses several sections. The first section under body is hero section. The second one is features. So I set this features width to be fill so that it fills the width of that homepage. The next thing I will do is to make my left and right padding 120, which is the same as my margin. Once my left and right padding is 120, I don't have to worry about about this margin being inconsistent, like we saw in some of these designs. Once that is set to 120, just remove that. It's already dealt with. You won't have inconsistency issues. As I duplicate this section and redesign it, I won't have inconsistency issues with my margin because I've already set my left and right padding to be 120. It's only if I change it, for instance, I reduce it now, that you can see that it's inconsistent. It's no longer sitting on the layout grid. So let me delete this and go back here. So now that I have my feature section coming together, let me quickly add the space between this text and the card. That looks like it's 60. The more you design, it will be easier for you to use your eye to tell spacing and all those things. So next thing I'm going to do, so I was talking about how I want to create my other cards, but if I duplicate this one, you can see it's showing at the bottom. That's because of the parent container, or that's the section. It has the direction set to vertical. So what am I going to do? I will select these two guys, put it in an auto layout frame, and change the direction to horizontal, and then create a third one. And the third one is actually there. Let me unclip so you can see. So clipping the frame hides and unhides what is overflowing. So this is what we have. So I'll go ahead to name my frame card wrapper, or card. Let me even use container. Why have I been using wrapper? Card container. And I think I have somewhere I used wrapper before. Okay, I guess I don't. So, but there's a problem here. The width is not yet set. So I'm going to delete these two guys. And I have the card container, and inside the card container is my card. First thing I'm going to do is to make it a component. Remember, duplicate it. And okay, before I duplicate it, the main component, I have to first set the width so that any duplicate I make, all the instances will have the same width that will occupy the whole width, just like this guy. The width here is equal to this and is equal to this. So there are several ways to do that. One way, okay, let me show you two ways. The very first way is I set the, what's it called? I set the width of this auto layout frame to be field container. Once I do that, nothing happens because of the width of the card container itself is set to fixed. But I want the width to occupy from here to here, such that the space between here is 120 and the space between here, instead of 733, should be 120. So what I just do is also set that card container to the field container. So we have 120 here, 120 here. And for my card 2 is also, because I set it to fill. If I set it to hog, this is what you have. You can see the space now. But because I set it to fill, it's occupying the whole width of the card container. And the card container width is also set to fill because it's occupying the whole width of the features section, except for where we have left and right padding. So that being said, I can now go ahead to duplicate my my card, and there's still one little bit of issue, and that issue is the text. The text is overflowing. It's overflowing because in the main component, I didn't set it to fill. So what I'm going to do is all the text inside there, I'm going to set it to fill. It's not every time that you want to set your items to fill, but this is one particular scenario where you want to do that. And then the card text, I'm also going to set that to fill. So now everything is sitting just like we have it here. You can see that. So that is one way to do it. But even despite this, there's still a little bit of issue with the space between each of the cards. And to set that, I just have to increase, or the more I increase the space, you can see that I don't have to worry about setting the space for the individual cards because I set it to fill. It will occupy the available width based on the gap space that I set. So that is one way to do it, by setting everything to fill. Let me duplicate that and show you another way, because you cannot always set your main components to fill. Remember that you should not be, this works because, let me delete this one. This works because I'm using the main components in the design. But I already said that your main components should not be in the design. But if I remove this, it would affect some things. So what I'm going to do is set the height to be fixed. I'm going to fix the width, rather, not height, the width of my main components. And then go ahead to remove it from there and put it in here where I have all my components. So I'm going to duplicate this one again. This is still an instance of that main component. So in order to determine the width of each of the frame, that is the reason why we have, if I say that, I have to bring this guy back. I have to use the main components to show you. So this is the main component. I'm going to use my layout grid to determine the width of my individual cards. And the way to do that, my layout grid has 12 columns. And it has 12 columns because I set it to have 12 columns. This is the layout grid. You can see it has, the count is 12. That is these pink columns, they are 12. So if I have 12 of them and I want to have 3 cards, what it means is I will just have to divide 12 by 3. Once I divide 12 by 3, it gives me 4. So it tells me that to have an even width distribution here, all I have to do is make sure that each of the cards occupy 4 columns. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4. This one is not occupying 4 yet. So I'll just drag this and make sure that it is sitting at the end of the column. And you would notice that if you are, I already know by default that 4 columns is 373 because I always make use of a section of frame size of 1440 and always give, me personally, that's what I prefer. You'll notice that people likes using 100. For me, I like using 120 and I give my margin to be 120, which makes the content area. The content area is the space between the first column and the last column. It will always make it 1200 because if you do 1440 minus 120 on the left minus 120 on the right, that's 1440 minus 240. It will give you 200. Figma also has a calculator in case you didn't know. 1440 minus 120 plus 120. It gives you let me do that again. 1440, okay, minus 240. That's board mass at work. 1440 minus 240. It gives you 1200. So that's what we have here. That's why we have this to be 1200. On the right, you have 120. On the left, you have 120, in case you were wondering. And those 120 values are coming from the padding setting of my features section. So that being said, I already made the width of the main components to be 373, which occupies 4 columns. And then automatically it will mean that the rest will be 373. But these ones are not showing as 373 because I already manually adjusted the width. So to do that, all I need to do is reset all changes. Okay, Figma does that sometimes. So I can just delete those instances and duplicate them again. So you can see that these new duplicates or these new instances have 373. But there's a problem. The space between this and the edge is still not 120. And the reason is because of the space within this container that houses all the cards is set to 60. Once I set it to 40, which is actually my gap. You remember that when I was setting my layout grid, I set the gutter rather, to be 40. So, and this is the reason why. Once I set 40 to be the space between each of the items within this card container, then there's no longer that overflow. There's no longer that overflow. The last card is, okay, it's saying 121 because of we have decimal issues. The whole thing doesn't sum up to give the ideal value. It's actually supposed to be 373.3333 and all of that. And even here, you can see now it's 120. But because we don't want decimals in our design, it's fine that way. So the very first method I taught you by using fill and all actually works too, but this is also fine. So that being said, we have to change the design of the remaining cards. We now have this guy, we have this guy, but we have different, the icon is different, the color is different. So the last thing I'll do is to change the icon, and I think that I can call it a day there. But first, to change the color, all I need to do, use the eyedropper to get that color. Okay, that's my primary color. So I can just do that from here. Set it to the primary color. The text is white. I don't need to click on them individually. I can do it from here. Make this white, make the black also white. And then the color is going to be reversed now. The card, the auto layout frame, remember that this is the icon. This is the icon. So I'm going to change this to purple, and then the auto layout frame that the icon is sitting in, I'm going to make it white. So we have that. And then same thing for the pink. You know what? Let me duplicate this and just change all the purple to pink. That's a faster and smarter way, sort of doing the same thing over and over again. So we have the three cards. So the only difference now is the icon. And then let me duplicate this and remove the main components. Remember, don't make use of your main component in your this. You can do that while designing, or actually don't even do that while designing. As you're making the main components, keep them somewhere else. So now the next thing I want to do is change the icon. So the thing about components is I can change the color, I can change the style of the component, but I can't change the layout. What's the difference between style and layout? Style is just like I change the color. I can change the color of the card. It won't affect the main component. I can change the style of the text. It won't affect the main component. I can change pretty much anything. Everything you have on your design. This is the design panel of Figma. Everything you have here is the style. I can't change the dimension though. Can't change the width and all of that. So everything, your text, just actually your style is just your text, mainly your text, your color and your drop shadow. That's mainly what you have as style. When you go to local styles, when you go to create style, you can see, okay, you have text, color, effect. That's where you have drop shadow, inner shadow, and all. And then grid. Grid is also a style, but that doesn't apply in this case. So in my instance, I can change the style, but I can't change the layout. What is the layout? The layout is the structure, the arrangement of things, what comes first. So in this instance now, if I say I want to make this icon be down, I'm currently pressing on down on my keyboard, but nothing is happening. Unlike on this section, this features section is also auto-lead, but it's not a component. So once I press down, you can see this is another advantage of using auto layout. It easily changes the layout of what I want. So if I go to the main component, I can change it there. I press up and the text goes up. You can see it reflects on the instances. Even the instances that I changed the color, it's only the color that was overridden. The layout wasn't overridden, so it doesn't affect it. But if I should change the color of the background of the card, which is the main component, if I change it to, let me say, blue, you can see that it doesn't affect these two guys because their color is already overridden, but it affects this guy because I didn't override the color. So as it's changed to blue, if I change the layout, it affects this one because I didn't override the layout. I can't even override the layout. There are some things that can be overridden in instances, but there's some things that cannot. So let me undo all of those changes. So what I'm saying is that for instances, you cannot remove, you cannot add. That's what it means. You cannot change the structure of the card because any change you want to do to the structure or the layout, you have to go and do it from the main components. Are you guys still following? Please let me know if you are. You can say something or drop a message in the chat. Nobody's saying anything. All right, thank you, Akunle. Thank you. So what I want to do here, while I'm explaining all these things about structure, is I want to change this icon, right? Because what we have here is a handshake icon and whatever this is. So because I cannot, if I get, let's get the handshake icon from Iconify. Let's use this one. Okay, and then also when it comes to consistency, you have to be consistent with your use of icon. So the first icon that we used, this is actually a field icon. You guys should, I think we mentioned it once, that you should read on the difference between fill and stroke. So I'm going to use this because it looks like it has almost the same kind of style as this. This is a field icon. These two icons are the same, but this is field. This is outline or stroke. Once you click on the icon, I think Iconify also shows you that. Okay, I guess it doesn't. There's some icon packs that you can actually change the style. You can change it from outline to fill, but not all icon packs have that. Some do and some don't. Not to waste time on that. I'm just going to pick this icon because it looks like it has a similar style. So you can see that I also imported that as a main component. I'm going to use the scale tool to reduce this to 24 because that's what I want it to be. And the name of the icon is handshake. So let me bring this in here. If I drag this icon and try and put it inside my auto layout frame, inside my instance, you see it's not working, it's not moving in. If I press Ctrl X to cut it, and then I want to paste it inside this card icon. If I delete this one, it can go. You see it's no more there. It's actually still there, but it's hidden. It doesn't delete. The only way to delete it is by deleting it from the main component. So you can hide and unhide elements. Components are not that strict. If you don't want something to show in one, for instance, if I don't want this text to show in this, I can delete it. But by deleting it, it's hiding it. And you can see that the height also decreased. But if I want the height to be the same, all I need to do is press fill, and that is done. But I don't want to hide the icon. It's this one I want to hide. I don't want to hide that text, rather. It's this icon I want to hide. Remember that I already pressed Ctrl X on that handshake icon, so it's currently on my clipboard. And then if I press Ctrl V or paste, you can see what happens. The icon is just sitting, it's not even in any frame. It's currently sitting on the canvas. Because if I go into this frame, rather, if I go into this card, this instance, these are all the things inside the card. You have the card icon, auto layout frame, two things, this and this. This looks like it's inside, but it's not. If I go and view it in prototype mode, I won't see it. Let's wait for this to load. Okay, so it's looking like it's inside here. So you might do mago in your design and put it here and say, okay, it's inside. As you're designing, you might think it's there. That's why you always have to come to presentation mode. It's not showing there. The reason it's not showing there is because it is not sitting in the layers panel. This icon, which is this, is not sitting inside the card that we're viewing, this purple card. So even if this card, let me detach it from the instance. What I did was Ctrl-Alt-B, or we can come here and detach instance. So now it's no longer, consider it's no longer an instance. This one is still an instance. This one is still an instance. But this one is no longer an instance. So by the time I bring in that icon, I can paste it here now and it will show. You can see it's there. But because that looks like a limitation of using components, there's actually a workaround to it. I'm just going to undo all of that and still make sure that, okay, the card is still an instance of this component. So the way that I can bring in this icon is by using a very unique feature that Figma has. I'm going to make this visible again, this icon. And what I'm going to do is just to change the components. And I can do that by coming here. And you have this is exactly why when I was importing this icon, I made it a component. If this icon is not made a component, I won't find it here. And it's called swapping instances. I can swap different icons. What I will do is you have different this particular icon now, you can see that it's named icons because I put it in here. It's named icons. So if I bring this guy in, remember I said this is why you should always organize your Figma file. Because of your designing and you're the one who's saying it does not mean that you should not now organize it properly. So let me make sure that the two icons have the same size, which is 32. Now both of them are sitting inside this icons auto lead frame. By the time I come back here and go to the feature to swap instances, you can see the second one. So in cases where I have over 1,000 icons sitting in here, I cannot be scrolling to find all of them. I can just easily search because I can search for handshake and it shows. So what I do is just to click on the handshake icon and it changes and it will show here because it is within the frame. And I didn't have to detach the instance. Some of you while designing already encountered this issue, I'm sure. And this is an easy way to work around it. So the last one we want to change is this icon. And what we have for that is, let's say this looks like a document icon. So I go back to iconify. This is actually long journey. There are different icon packs that you can get that all the icons are already named appropriately and are all components. You just need to paste it on your Figma file, and once you go to that swap instance, you search and you find everything you're looking for. But since we're doing rush work, I'm just going to search for documents, because that looks like a document icon. Which one should we use? We have to use something that is similar in style to the previous ones we had. Let's use this guy. So I import it as components. So let me import the icon not as components, just clicking import as icon. Let me delete the component. So importing as icon, even if I bring that icon I just imported, this thing is too far. Let me bring it down here. If I paste it inside here and resize it to be 32, you can see now that it is still sitting inside this frame. The name of the icon is documents, outline, whatever. And I want to change this one, just like I did for the last one. It's not showing here. Why is it not showing? Simply because it's not a component or it's not an instance, because this feature is just only going to look for instances. But by the time I come here and make it a component, make the icon a component, I can come back here and it's going to show. And I change my icon and we have it already. I didn't have to detach any of these cards. They are all still instances. So I already told you the reason why it's important to use instances. So far, you guys have just been designing one pages. But by the time you have a website that has so many different pages, and maybe this particular section that we call features, it's in like this website, for instance. Let's say this features section, you have it on the home page, you have it on the About Us page, you have it on the agents page and things like that. The thing about itself is that you might still use the same design, but just change the contents. Instead of having features, you might use this for services. You might use this for our unique selling points, different things. You can still make use of that same style, that same component, and just change the content. So if at any point I want to change the color or anything, or the width, I just have to change it at the main component. And as long as I am not overreading the particular style or feature I'm changing, it should reflect in all. So the importance of using components for button, for instance, I didn't remember to make this button a component. So I'll just do that, duplicate it, and move the main instance here. And then if, for instance, I want to have a second button there, maybe a ghost button, what we call our secondary action button, what I'll do, you've already been taught how to create variants. I'll click it here, name this secondary. I don't need to add button. You'll see why I don't need to add button to that name. So this is it. This is the secondary button. This is the default. Let's call the default primary. And what is the property? The property is type. Let's say type of button. You can have different properties. You can have state. State is like hover, inactive, disabled, and all of that. But let's go. You can always leave it as property one. It doesn't matter. But I'm just used to changing them. So you have primary, and then you have secondary. So this is showing like this because the fill of the color of the button is white. So what I changed is the component sets background. This is the component, the purple line and dotted, whatever, is the component set. That's what houses these two variants. So if I want to make this a ghost button or our secondary action button, what I'm going to do is remove the fill because I don't want it, but now add a stroke of white and change the text color to white. And then we have, or you can also make that purple. It can be purple, it can be white, but that will vary based on where you're using it. So if I now want to add a secondary action button here, like maybe contact us, I duplicate this one. Oh, okay, we don't have it in another layout frame. So let me make this also. I didn't remember to name this. Let's name it hero text. And then the whole container, let's name it hero container. Hero container. And let's make that still following the, so you notice that when spacing, I've been using 24, 40 and all. I'm trying as much as possible to follow the 8-point spacing system. That also applies when using auto layout. So it just makes it easy. It makes it really easy. So I've already made all of this, put them into auto layout frame. And if I duplicate this button, it's going to show down here. But I want it to be beside. So I'm going to select these two buttons, give it auto layout. I'm going to call that container CTA buttons, call to action buttons, and then change the direction to be horizontal and reduce that space just a little to be 40. And because I made use of variants, I can change this here. Remember, this is what I edited, the type of the button. I can change it from primary to secondary, and voila, it's as easy as that. You can see it in the design. I changed the text to, what did we call it? Contact us. And that is the secondary action button. So the difference between these two is that this is the primary action button. It calls for attention more than the secondary action button, which looks like it's also called a ghost button. So that's what we have for this website that we just designed 2 sections. So the amazing thing, that might look like we spent 1 hour. I think I started this around 4. That might look like it took time, but by the time I want to design another section, let's say this next section, for instance, all I have to do now is duplicate this. Let me delete this. Duplicate this, and I won't need this anymore. I can copy this paragraph text that we have here, add it here, put the 2 into auto layout frame, change the height, reduce the gap, and we already have this. The next thing I will do is to add the button. In some cases where you have your button on a separate page, because if you have a very bulky file, it's good practice to have 1 page for your style guide and all your components. So you have it on a separate page. To easily import, let me name this container text. To easily import my button, I can do that by trying to remember what the manual way is. But the shortcut is just to press Shift-I. Okay, that's what we have here. When you click on this guy, resources, once you click on resources, you have components. Just ignore plugins and widgets for now. So you can see a list of all your components. Remember that I grouped my components into 2, icons and components, and these are the frames showing. I can just easily search for button and it will show here, or I can do that manually and click on button. So it just imports my button. It drops it inside the auto layout frame because I was clicking on that auto layout frame. If I try and import an icon, it will drop it also inside that text container or auto layout frame, because that's what I was clicking on when I imported. And then next thing I'm going to do is change this to secondary. So it's not showing here because the color is white. So one thing you can do is to create a variant of this in your component set that is what's it called? I did that by pressing Ctrl D. So I can call this secondary purple or whatever. I can also just override the color of this secondary button. That's secondary 1 or secondary nothing. I can just change this to purple. You can use either of the method or change it to secondary purple. Okay, it's not changing because I haven't changed this secondary purple here to actual purple. It's still showing as white. If I change this to purple, what's going on? You can see the way all of you are always disturbing me. Sophia, the person that is messaging me now, she's not on this call. Continue. So the color has changed here now. So I have 3 different variants: secondary, which is white; primary, which is the primary color; and secondary purple, which is this. So it's just as simple as that. Because I've made this auto layout, I can easily change the structure. And if, for instance, now I've done this and I'm reviewing, or maybe I send this to the client, and the client is like, oh no, I don't want this. You can see everything is already on one line, but the client says, I want this section. Let me put an image there. To do that, I have to change this to horizontal so that the image can be on the right. Let me reduce the size and do this. So if the client says, let's change this to about, if the client says, I want or if your boss at work or whatever the case may be says, I want this about section to come before services and features section, I just press down on features and it changes. It's as simple as that. If you are not using auto layout on this home page frame, let me remove auto layout from there so you can see this home page. If I remove auto layouts from the home page frame, once I click on this about, I'm pressing down. You can see what's happening. It's just going down. It's not swapping. It's only swapping because it was in an auto layout frame. So it's as simple as that. Do you guys have any question? So you can call it a day. Any question within the next 10 seconds? If there are no questions, let's just wrap up. No questions in 3, 2, 1. All right, then. Thank you guys for sticking to the end. No, all right then. Thank you all for staying to the end of the class. We'll see you on Discord. Have a nice rest of your day. Bye.